interrupt this program to bring you Courage, the Cowardly Dog Month.
Whole month of Courage, the Cowardly Dog. First appearing in 1996, it was picked up by Cartoon Network, who work in the middle of Burbank, and directed by cartoonist John Dilworth. Though many years have passed since the original air date, it's now time for Zack to celebrate this great show.
Well, old sport, what do you think? Neat.
Hey guys, Zack here, and welcome back to Courage Month. So we've got two new reviews for you guys. We're going to be reviewing Human Habitrail and Mission to the Sun. One of which I have seen and is kind of creepy, even years later, and the other one I have not seen. So without further ado, let's just get into it. Okay, so this first episode of Human Habitrail is actually set during spring. I think they're doing some spring cleaning. Around the time that the antagonist shows up. But in any case, Eustace, Muriel, and Courage are doing some spring cleaning. Eustace not so much. He's trying to eat soup and is picking lint out of his soup while he's trying to eat it. Meanwhile, Muriel is just dusting up a storm with her broom, and Courage, who's trying to clean the banister, starts choking on the dust and actually puts on a gas mask to actually shield himself from the dust because it's going everywhere. And Muriel even scolds Eustace, pointing out that he's just too cheap to buy a vacuum for her, and points out that if he had thought of vacuum, there wouldn't be so much dust everywhere. But he merely responds that she's not sweeping hard enough. So, at which point they get a knock on the door, and Muriel opens it to reveal Dr. Gerbil, who happens to be going door to door selling a vacuum cleaner. And Dr. Gerbil introduces himself. He states that he actually has a vacuum cleaner for sale, and then proceeds to ask him a bit of questions to see if they're the right fit for his vacuum cleaner. And while some of them are typical stuff that people would typically ask from a door to door salesman, some of them, Courage notes that some of them seem a little strange and sinister. And specifically that he seems like he's asking some questions that don't really make sense for a door-to-door salesman to be asking. And then, as Courage is pondering what's going on with Dr. Gerbil, he actually hears a voice coming from inside the vacuum, and realizing that somebody is stuck inside, he starts panicking and trying to alert his owners, but Dr. Gerbil merely continues on with his questions. Even going so far as to ask if there are anybody near that they live completely in the middle of nowhere and there's nobody nearby, which they obviously answer yes to. When Courage still doesn't calm down, Dr. Gerbil actually pulls him aside and tells him that he doesn't have to worry anymore. And then proceeds to turn on the vacuum cleaner and suck both Eustace and Muriel inside. And Courage is so shocked that he quite literally falls to pieces. At which point, Dr. Gerbil whispers to him that he no longer has to be worried because now he's free. And then proceeds to get into his car with the vacuum cleaner. At which point, Courage recovers and chases after Dr. Gerbil. Actually catches up to his car and clings to the underside of it and follows him back to his burrow, where Dr. Gerbil then proceeds to climb down into the hole, and Courage follows immediately after. He winds up injuring himself and laughing hysterically from it because he is that badly, because that's just a recurring thing where he gets so injured that he becomes loopy and laughs hysterically. So he winds up falling into Dr. Gerbil's burrow and starts looking for where his owners actually are. Meanwhile, Dr. Gerbil has actually brought them back to his experiment room, where he actually has a couple of other live test subjects, including someone called the Lit Lady, who Eustace and Muriel actually meet in the vacuum. And all we really know from her is that she's been in the vacuum so long that she's actually gone crazy, to the point where she starts laying up the ground rules about how it works in the vacuum. Basically, half the lint is hers, half the lint is Eustace and Muriel's, and as long as they follow that rule, there won't be any trouble. At which point, all three of them are actually spit out of the vacuum cleaner, and into a Habitrail that Dr. Gerbil has, and Dr. Gerbil immediately takes a Lint Lady and begins running experiments on her. With Muriel merely reacting with a bit of shock and awe, and Eustace merely responding that this is how they get you. So yeah, Eustace still thinks they're buying a vacuum cleaner, which is funny. But eventually, Dr. Gerbil comes back and has modified the Lint Lady with suction plungers for hands and feet, which freak Muriel and Eustace out. At which point Dr. Gerbil puts her in a jar, and then brings them to the other room, saying that they're going to run some experiments for him, and he's going to work on some of his products. And on a long story short, he brings them in to actually run experiments with some of his products, while the lit lady actually manages to escape and winds up running into Courage, who is currently running blind through Dr. Gerbil's lair. And after running into her, and after also once again complaining about lint, Courage is eventually able to actually find out where his owners are, and by showing her a picture, and she points her in the general direction of Dr. Gerbil's lab and states that terrible things are happening in there, and terrible things. So Courage actually immediately rushes off and goes to find them. At which point he comes across a boat. Gets into it, starts riding it, and actually rides through a ride called Doc Gerbil's World, which is just a showcase of all the different products that he's been working on. And the song In Universe is so annoying that Courage actually starts plugging his ears and eventually thinks about bailing ship entirely. Meanwhile, Dr. Gerbil is actually experimenting with said products. As it turns out, he makes cosmetics, but he hasn't gotten it quite right, hence why he needs the live test subjects. Because, long story short, anything his things are applied to wind up growing weird abnormalities, and then they explode. So he's trying to figure out he's trying to figure out the best way to actually make it to actually perfect his stuff so that they actually don't explode. At which point he decides that that's enough for the day, and actually puts Eustace and Muriel back on the Habitrail, and then proceeds to leave and decides to go to bed and actually go think of some things through. At which point Courage sees them all through the window and immediately abandons ship and goes after Dr. Gerbil. And goes in and tries to get into the lab. The lab has a big glass window by it, and then a vent above that. And Courage, using cartoon physics, actually climbs inside an aerosol can that's nearby and aerosolizes himself using it to actually slip through the vent. So just imagine Courage to cowardly smoke. That's all you need to know. At which point you actually sees Eustace and Muriel in the Habitrail. And Muriel is happy to see him, whereas Eustace is busy running on the hamster wheel that's in there. But eventually, Courage does manage to locate the vacuum and sucks him inside. But he's then chased by Dr. Gerbil, who finds out that Courage is stealing his live test subjects and tries to chase after him. But Courage merely uses the vacuum to escape. He pulls the window of the lab out to actually get back to the ride, and then proceeds to get into a chase with Dr. Gerbil as he tries to get his vacuum back. Courage actually winds up using the deodorant to actually leave a slippery trail for Dr. Gerbil to slip on, and then also tries it himself, which causes his armpits to explode for obvious reasons, because that is Dr. Gerbil's entire thing. None of his products actually work the way they're intended to, which is why which is why he needs the live test subjects. He's trying to make cleanliness products, and they're just not working. But in any case, Dr. Gerbil winds up slipping on the trail deodorant and actually winds up knocking over a can of bubble bath, which falls into the ride. At which point Courage gets back in the boat and Dr. Gerbil into a jet ski, and the two proceed to race out of the tunnel and out into the main river where Dr. Gerbil's hideout is located near. And also throughout this entire sequence, there's just this big ominous otherworldly choir just humming away in the background as Dr. Gerbil chases after Courage, and eventually the two actually wind up at a waterfall, with Courage having set the vacuum to exhaust to actually kind of push himself along. Actually switches it back to vacuum and actually pulls himself closer to the riverbank so that he's safe, but Dr. Gerbil is not, and Dr. Gerbil winds up going over the waterfall and is badly injured, but he's still very much alive. So yeah, he winds up injuring himself. He gets hurt a little bit, but he winds up surviving a fall from a waterfall. So yeah, he's kind of supernatural, but he does kind of laugh a little bit like Courage does when he gets hurt, and then he passes out. At which point Courage, now having rescued his owners, actually brings them back to the house, with with Courage now being a little bit soggy because he actually obviously had to swim, he had to go in the river a little bit. Courage and Muriel actually thanks Courage for rescuing him, pulling him into a hug, but Eustace actually notices something a little bit odd, which is that he's eating his soup, it's full of dust again, and he notices Lint Lady playing in the lint in his soup again, and declaring that it's her lint and that nobody else is allowed to touch it. So yeah, Lint Lady followed them home. Somehow she got sucked into the vacuum, but for whatever reason did not turn back to the normal size, unlike Muriel and Eustace. So that's a little bit weird, but in any case, yeah, Dr. Gerbil is kind of interesting in that he is kind of a mad scientist, but he was trying to, and also it's interesting that he believes that Courage was being enslaved by humans, which is technically true in Eustace's case, but it is interesting that he not only takes sympathy on Courage for being enslaved by humans, but he also is trying to make hair care products. He's trying to make cleanliness products to kind of change the world, but he keeps fucking it up. So yeah, he's kind of interesting as an antagonist for that reason. But in any case, that's my review of Human Habitrail. Onward to the next one. Okay, so this episode, Mission to the Sun, is actually kind of funny in that. Well, long story short, the episode begins with, just to summarize, just going right into the summary, the episode begins with, Muriel, Eustace, and Courage getting a, letter for a timeshare, and they're told that they'll be given another timeshare, because apparently they have the one timeshare in Antarctica, but they don't have another, but they need another timeshare apparently, so they're given another timeshare, and this time, they're actually sent into space to go kind of redeem the mission for their timeshare. At which point, the computer, which apparently is the same as their home computer, but the computer, long story short, is with them on the mission to go to the sun. And they're currently in stasis pods. It wakes them up and tells them to actually get ready to go to the control center and actually receive their mission. With Eustace just kind of being a little bit annoyed, and he winds up going to the cockpit anyway to actually go and turn on the TV. He's working, and he's actually trying to figure out how the TV works when he accidentally sets off a mission from the general, who appears for the first time in this episode. He was implied to have existed in Invisible Muriel as the guy giving the orders, but we don't actually see him until this episode. But in any case, the general, he shows up and gives them their mission in gibberish, and then says his mission is narrative with Godspeed. So they have no idea what's going on. At which point the computer has to spell it out, stating that the sun is going to go out. And that if they don't complete their mission, the sun will go out forever, and they'll never actually be able to revive it. So with that, they're then given their mission, and they have 2 hours. They have a little over 2 hours, 2.5 hours to actually finish their mission. So. And with that, Eustace actually winds up leaving and goes to go figure out the bathroom. While Muriel points out that if they are going to solve the mission, it might as well be them. So they then proceed to get ready and go about their business. Muriel actually goes about her business, trying to clean the ship, while Eustace, as I said, is trying to figure out how the toilet works, and then his hat winds up getting stuck in the airlock because of that. So yeah, his hat winds up getting stuck in the airlock that enables the toilet to actually flush. So he winds up trying to figure out how to retrieve it through his side. Meanwhile, Courage is kind of trying to figure out all the different control schemes with the computer, but the computer is taking that opportunity to actually mess with him. So the computer actually isn't being all that helpful. So yeah, Courage just kind of winds up being messed with by the computer. Meanwhile, as Eustace and Muriel actually fiddling around with their respective things, a strange small little alien actually shows up and actually tries to board the ship. He actually welds a hole in the ship after seeing Eustace's hat stuck in the airlock, and decides to actually board the ship and actually slip in through a very small hole that he made, because this guy is teeny tiny. He's like really, really, really small. But in case he then proceeds to go out his business by drilling a hole in Muriel's suit, which Muriel thinks is Eustace pinching her, and she kind of flirts with Eustace because of that, and winds up slapping his helmet off. which with Eustace not fully understanding what's going on. But eventually, the alien actually winds up pulling out the one of Muriel's hair follicles and actually climbing inside her body. And neither Eustace or Courage actually discover this until they actually sit down to eat some astronaut food, which Eustace, despite pointing out that it's lousy, tube food, because that's the only thing astronauts can eat. He winds up that it's not bad. He winds up liking it. So oddly enough, he complains about the fact that it's in a tube, but at the end, but after eating it, he winds up liking it a whole bunch. So he points out that it's probably not half bad. If it comes from a tube, then it's probably fine. So methinks Eustace found a new favorite food in this episode. But in any case, as Muriel is about to sit down and eat her food, she suddenly starts acting crazy. And a bunch of weird things start happening to her. Her hair grows out and falls out, and then she grows a beard. She winds up randomly spouting gibberish, and she winds up trying to wrestle Eustace. She even inflates like a balloon a couple of times. And then after a while, she decides she's had enough and decides to go back for a nap. And it's all the little aliens, all the aliens' fault. He's actually crawled into her central nervous system and is controlling her that way. And she eventually does go back to get a nap. And Courage actually panicking a little bit because he realizes something weird is happening with Muriel. He actually goes back to the computer and actually asks the computer what's going on. Meanwhile, the alien has since figured out how to actually take full control of Muriel's brain and actually succeeds in getting her to sabotage the mission. So she starts ripping out wires from the cables in her room, which caused the computer to sputter out as it's trying to tell Courage what exactly is going on with Muriel. So Courage climbs into the air duct to actually investigate. He follows the wires and eventually winds up in Muriel's room and realizing that something is going on with her. He kind of tries to run with her and tries to figure out what's going on, and which results in them actually getting into a wrestling match as the alien through Muriel's body actually starts shoving her around. And it's at this point when they're actually fighting. And Muriel actually winds up ripping up the air supply, which Eustace is currently attached to, and is trying to actually pull his hat out from the air duct. And because she winds up damaging the air supply while he's attached to it, he winds up flying off into space and yelling "stupid space" as he disappears, and we don't really see much of him for most of the episode after this point. But in any case, the alien finally decides to reveal itself. Revealing itself to be named Mustafa al-Bacterius, an alien who is annoyed with Courage and his human companions for trying to fix the sun. He doesn't like that. He doesn't like that humans constantly meddle with things. And he points out that this is no exception. They're trying to fix the sun, which he points out is just the natural course of things, and if the sun is indeed going out, that they should let it. But in any case, Courage eventually realizing that Mustafa is actually inside of Muriel's brain, tries to find ways to actually get the alien out. He winds up trying to reach into Muriel's ear and pull it out, but this only results in Mustafa turning on the anti-gravity, which causes them to start free floating in the spaceship. At which point Courage actually pulls out a plunger and tries to pull Mustafa out through Muriel's ear, which doesn't wind up working, but in the process, Mustafa accidentally winds up sending himself flying headfirst into the toilet, and he winds up being pulled out of Muriel's ear that way. So he winds up flying off into space, and he just kind of winds up not being able to fulfill his goal. So with Mustafa actually defeated, Courage manages to pull Muriel's head out of the toilet, but now they only have 9 minutes to fix the sun because they spent so long screwing around with Mustafa. So Courage actually winds up landing their spacecraft on the sun, which obviously senses the sun. It melts, and then pulls out what he needs to actually go and fix the sun. As it turns out, the sun is light bulb powered, and Courage just needed to change the light bulb. So yeah. That's canon to the world of Courage the Cowardly Dog. The sun is light bulb powered, and it needs somebody to change the light bulb every now and again. But in any case, Muriel then thanks Courage for actually fixing the sun, but points out that since their aircraft was destroyed, they'd have no way to get home. But as it turns out, they don't need to worry about all that much, because in the process of actually being going tumbling through space, Eustace actually winds up landing on a meteor, and Courage uses a grappling hook from his suit to actually hook onto it, and they wind up going back to their timeshare, which isn't on Earth, it's actually on Mars. And Muriel even remarks that it was nice for the government to actually bring them their house as well, so that they could actually have their whole living situation on the moon, well, on Mars. But as in any case, as they finally celebrate their victory over having fixed the sun, Eustace starts acting strangely, and it's revealed that Mustafa actually flew into his brain and is actually controlling him now, with Mustafa remarking that he hasn't even begun to fight. So yeah, presumably that fight happens entirely off screen, because Mustafa isn't in the next episode. This is not a two-parter. That's interesting. So Mustafa is kind of interesting that he's the only he's one of the few antagonists to not be defeated by the end of his episode, because obviously he came back with Eustace and is now trying to fight Courage and Muriel again. So he clearly hasn't given up. But the main thing of this episode is that they were rewarded a timeshare for fixing the sun, and what they needed to do to fix the sun was screwing the light bulb. So yeah, that's a thing. That's a thing this episode. That's all you need to know. But in any case, that's my review of Courage the Cowardly Dog. What did you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter in the description below. Be sure to check out my Patreon in the description below as well if you want to help support the show. It really does help me out, and this is a very big project, and I would like to make more projects like this. So if you want to support me, by all means, link is down in the description. In any case, thank you. Also, be sure to just check out my Twitch down in the description below as well, because I'm streaming a bunch of horror games to go along with Courage Month. I put them in the playlist so you can actually see them. And I've also put them in my Twitch playlist as well. So be sure to go check that playlist out as well. And finally, if you want to see more content from me, either of which may or may not be Courage related, then you just need to check out the videos linked in the end screen. The top video is the most recent one, and again, it may or may not be Courage related, whereas the bottom video is a video recommended to you based on what you've already seen. So if you want to try something new, or see more of what you like, either of which could be Courage related, then be sure to check both of those videos out in the links on the end screen. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace!